Former Rosa Valley parliamentary representative Norris Charles says there is justification for the United Workers' Party's decision to boycott the parliament. He says the UWP is making a sacrifice to send a message to the world that elections should be free and fair.
There was a question of bribery, there was a question of corruption, and the question of the elections was not free and fair. We have an issue with the press, with DBS, which denied the United Workers' Party access. Action by the United Workers' Party is in the defense of democracy. And we believe that something had to be done to ensure that elections are free and fair in Dominica. And this, as far as I am concerned, is a sacrifice that the United Workers' Party is making to send a message to the Labour Party government, to send a message to the world that elections should be free and fair. And if it means boycotting Parliament, if it means non-participation to bring about change, I stand for it. The point is, the Speaker says that the Marigot seat and the Salisbury seat has been vacated. And if the rules say it is vacated and there should be by-elections, well, there will be by-elections in Marigot and in Salisbury. Our protest should stand until such time that the government recognize the fact that there should be free and fair elections, that there should be identification cards, that the opposition should have access to the media, that the voters list should be clean, and what have you.
Former Rosa Valley parliamentary representative Norris Charles. 2 seats held by the UWP have been declared vacant by the Speaker of the House of Assembly last week. Efforts to replace the current 60-year-old forest policy for Dominica moves into a new stage when stakeholders meet this week to further discuss the process of a new policy. Stakeholders are expected to discuss the first draft of documents and are expected to make recommendations that would be incorporated into a final document to be sent to Cabinet for approval. Ronald Charles is Assistant Protection Officer at the Forestry Division.
Basically, the process for reviewing Dominica's forest policy goes into a second phase, a new stage this week. That is when a number of stakeholders are brought together. They will come together to discuss the draft document that has been prepared. And the idea is basically to solicit the inputs from as many people as possible across Dominica to get their insights, to get their feedback, to get their suggestions, their recommendations into what could go, what ought to go into a new forest policy. Bearing in mind that forest touches the lives of everybody in Dominica, whether you live in the rural Dominica or you live in urban Dominica, forest touches the lives of everyone. We talk of ecotourism. Forestry is the basis of Dominica's ecotourism product. So that is the mindset, the reasoning that has gone into the stakeholders meeting consultation, which is coming up on Wednesday, May 12th. Subsequent to that, there will be another session on the 26th of May, where all the discussion, all the feedback that will derive out of the May 12th discussion will be further refined and brought to bear in one other document, further discussed before it is finalized and sent to Cabinet. So it is an open and transparent process whereby people are being invited to comment, being invited to have their say, to make a contribution towards the fulfillment or the development rather of a new forest policy for Dominica.
Assistant Protection Officer at the Forestry Division, Ronald Charles. Efforts to foster greater collaboration between the education and health sectors in gender-responsive HIV prevention strategies will be top on the agenda during a roundtable discussion this week. The roundtable discussion is part of a project aimed at strengthening gender-responsive prevention approaches, given the growing understanding that harmful gender stereotypes and relations are a driver of HIV epidemic in the Caribbean.
This gender-sensitive approach started since last year with UNIFEM. We're looking at how we can make health and education sectors take on a more gender-sensitive approach in their programming. And this roundtable discussion is the second phase to that. We did presentations last year to the education sector and to the health sector. So what we hope to achieve this Thursday is to foster greater collaboration between the education and health sectors in gender-responsive HIV prevention strategies. We also hope to discuss the role of education sector in HIV prevention. As you may be aware, they are critical in terms of HIV education for the schools. We also want to determine the key areas and strategies for addressing gender, sexuality, and human rights for HIV prevention in the sex education and HIV components of the health and family life education program in the schools, to familiarize participants with the sexual and reproductive rights of children and adolescents and the linkages with HIV prevention, and to discuss strategies, policies, and programs geared towards young people in relation to gender and human rights for HIV prevention. So these are some of the objectives we hope to come out of this roundtable discussion on Thursday.
National HIV and AIDS Response Program Coordinator Nurse Julie Frampton. The roundtable discussion on the gender-responsive HIV prevention strategies will take place at the Gallery Hotel on Thursday from 8:30 a.m. Veteran sports commentator Reginald St. Havis Shillingford believes West Indies to some extent redeemed themselves by getting a favorable result over India in the 2020 World Cup tournament after their very poor performance against Sri Lanka. Shillingford comments come on the heels of the tour of the West Indies, which has caught the attention of cricket fans in the region, and recent matches which have raised the questions throughout the region over the competence of the West Indies in the games ahead.
From the outset, thanks largely to Chris Gayle playing an inspired knock. His 98 came in only 66 balls, and it took only a brilliant bit of fielding to see his departure when he was going for a second run out. West Indies ending eventually on 169 for 6. The target of 170 at 8.5 runs per over proved very challenging for the Indians, who found the lift-in delivery disconcerting, and they lost wickets regularly. When a direct hit by Dwayne Bravo accounted for the run-out of Dhoni to make the score 139 for 8, the writing was indeed well and truly on the wall. India reached 155 for 9, leaving West Indies winners by 14 runs. It was in the end a good win for West Indies, but there were times when the bowling was rather erratic in desired length and line. All is left to be seen as to how West Indies would shape against Australia in their final match in the Super 8s, and whether Chris Gayle and his men can sneak into the semi-finals. Now, on quite another area of consideration, the information that the Jamaican Marlon Samuels has served his 2-year ban and is available now for selection to the West Indies team comes as good news in view of a somewhat chronic weakness with the West Indies middle order batting. All this is in context of the South Africa tour to the Caribbean for one-day international engagements, which starts shortly. However, much depends on what sort of batting form Samuels reveals and how well he shows himself to have adjusted to indictments of occasional throw-in in respect of his faster delivery while bowling. If all goes well, as a reacquisition, one would call it, Marlon Samuels would be a very fine asset as a top-order batsman, slow bowler, and capable fielder. Whom would he replace at the top of the order? More likely, I think it should be a player like Ramnaresh Sawan on account of Sawan's limited usefulness in the field, or as a bowler, and a somewhat lack of compatibility with the batting requirements of the one-day international game in view of his apparent lack of batting form. Reginald Davis Shillingford for Kairi.